Welcome in everyone. In today's video, we'll be going over Hawk's biggest update ever, the PvE rehaul of its third issue or season, Worlds Beyond. In addition to covering the obvious, such as the new PvE mode, artifact synthesis system, and the reputation system, we'll also be talking about the Realities Expansion Pass DLC that many of us have questions and concerns about. We'll be going over the DLC first and talk about things such as what actually comes with the DLC, if it's necessary to have it or not to enjoy the game, as well as my personal opinion on if you should get it or not. Really quickly before we start getting into things though, if you're not familiar with it, Hawk is a PvPvE extract shooter themed around treasure hunting on a mysterious island. Complete puzzles, defeat enemies, and recover treasures that you can use in your future games to give you additional abilities to overcome any obstacle. The latest update for Hawk has shifted the game's focus to a PvE co-op extract shooter, so everything that I talk about in this video will be from the perspective of Hawk being a PvE game unless stated otherwise. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get started with one of the biggest concerns of the update, the Realities Expansion Pass DLC. First off, there are currently two different tiers of this DLC, the Realities Pass and the Masters of Realities Pass. Both will grant you complete access to the DLC's content, but the Master of Realities DLC will give you additional head start items in the form of high-tier weapons and artifacts for an additional cost. Now, what does the DLC actually contain, you may ask? Mainly, it gives you access to 2 additional maps and the related quest storylines, each themed around one of the game's enemy types. One for the robot alien invaders called Vector, and the other for the corruption that's running rampant through the island called the Corrupted. The DLC also allows you to synthesize 2 additional variants of high-tier artifacts, Masterwork and Corrupted artifacts, which we'll go over later. The DLC also gives you access to all of the available class cards in the game, which give you a specific playstyle buff when you equip a specific set of abilities and gear. The DLC also gives you access to about 9 of the newest artifacts, which are otherwise unobtainable without the DLC. Now, this is where things get a little sticky. As you progress through these DLC-locked quest storylines, it will unlock various abilities and gear for your character, such as offensive or defensive abilities to help you in combat, or in-game purchasable weapons and buffs to gear up with before you embark on a run. If you don't own any of the DLC, you can't unlock these various gears. However, if you had played previously and had these abilities unlocked prior, you'll find that you still have them despite not having the required reputation levels for them. It also goes without saying that you will not be able to synthesize previously mentioned Masterwork and Corrupted artifacts, nor will have access to all the class cards. That's pretty much all the DLC contains in a nutshell, so I'll end this segment with my personal opinion on it. Currently, Hawk is pretty much split into a enjoyable free version and a fully paid version which is unlocked by purchasing the DLC. New maps aside, you won't have access to a number of the combat abilities, preparation gear, class card buffs, and artifacts if you don't purchase the DLC. This severely limits a free-to-play player's ability to create and customize their loadout, with many of the meta abilities being locked behind the DLC. However, you can still fully experience what Hawk has to offer in the free version, as the actual gameplay loop isn't restricted in any way. With the exception of if you play the PvP mode, you are at a severe disadvantage against DLC owners for obvious reasons. In my opinion, the DLC is more of a pay-to-have more fun or options style instead of a pay-to-win style. You'll be able to fully play and enjoy the core concept of the game without the DLC, and you can purchase it at any time to unlock the rest of the fun stuff whenever you'd like to. Personally, I don't like how they gated so much of the game behind this DLC, but that's the developer's decision and not mine. With all that said, let's move on to the actual new features and systems in the update. We'll start off by talking about the new method of unlocking abilities and gear, the reputation system. The Grail loyalty level system was replaced with the quest-based reputation system. Each enemy-themed map has a respective NPC that is quote-unquote working on fixing that reality, and you're here to help them. Tabitha is working on the Disciples, which is available to all players. Nelly is working on the Vector, and Bjorn is working on the Corrupted, both of which are exclusive to DLC owners. Each reputation track has a main quest that must be completed in order to level up the reputation track, along with smaller repeatable quests that will give you reputation upon completion. Once you've leveled up your reputation on that track, you'll unlock the listed rewards, which include combat abilities called Exos and Wards, and armory gear such as weapons and boosters. But wait, what's this armory you mentioned? This update added in the Grail Armory. You can purchase weapons, buffs, and shields that can be taken into your next game to give you a head start on exploring. These mentioned buffs have replaced the booster system which we previously had, with many of the boosters now being an equipable buff item. You start with basic low-tier weapons, but as you level up your reputation with each NPC, you'll unlock stronger gear available for purchase. You can see what reputation level you need to unlock something by the icon that's next to each piece of gear. And to top it all off, you get to keep this gear as long as you successfully extract with it. In fact, you get to keep all the gear you extract with after every game, regardless of if it's available to you in the armory. You can reuse the gear in your next run or put it on the side for another time by moving it into your reserves in your loadout. Just remember that you need to successfully extract in order to keep your stuff. If you don't make it back, it goes without saying that you've lost everything you had on you. Now that you've purchased a starter loadout from the armory, let's head to Exile and see what's up with the new PvE game mode. There are 3 maps available, with each one spawning mostly, if not only, their corresponding enemy type: Descendants, Vector, and Corrupted. For this video, we'll be going to the Descendants map as it's free for all players. In this PvE mode, the main changes are that the enemies are more abundant, are more densely packed, have more HP, and do more damage. Some enemies even have new elements such as the poison or fire spitters, and some groups of enemies will even periodically respawn. There are also random per-match effects called mutators that give each game a different map-wide effect, such as enemies healing their allies on death or having your combat abilities change randomly throughout the game. Every map also has corrupted renegade enemies that will ambush you, which effectively are AI bot players that can drop powerful corrupted weapons. These corrupted weapons are more powerful than their purple tier variants, and also come with an extra effect such as firing additional projectiles or gaining damage the longer you hold the trigger. However, each corrupted weapon you hold increases your damage taken by 5%. Every weapon in the game has a corrupted variant, which can be seen and tested in the firing range. To no one's surprise, this mode is purely PvE and has no PvP combat whatsoever. You may encounter other player squads on the island, but you've all agreed to set aside your differences and cannot harm each other in this mode. You and up to 2 allies randomly spawn on the island and make your way to the Treasury by collecting 4 glyphs by completing various puzzles and combat encounters that are scattered across the map. These glyphs will not only serve as the combination to unlock the vault that contains the rare artifact you're after, but will also empower you with various effects depending on which glyph you've uncovered. Once you've uncovered all 4 glyphs, make your way to and open the main treasury, which holds the rare artifact you're after. This is where things get a bit different, as instead of finding the artifact in the vault, there's instead a portal to a final dungeon. Enter this portal and clear the final dungeon, which is cleared with numerous enemies, traps, and puzzles, which eventually leads you to the artifact you're after. Clear out the final boss room and the artifact is yours for the taking. Simply pick it up and secure the final extract pad to secure the goods. This isn't the only artifact you'll find in each match, however. In addition to the artifact caravans we're already familiar with, you may also find rival named Renegades, which are also AI bots, who ambush you. Should you defeat them, they'll drop high-value loot and a low-rarity artifact. You may also find an artifact by completing in-game NPC missions indicated by a yellow magnifying glass on your minimap, or by completing glyph encounters inside the Fortune Rifts. Fortune Rifts are highlighted zones on the map that are more dangerous but are more rewarding, as they reward you with an additional high-value trinket when you complete a glyph encounter there, and may even reward you with a chunk of Wonderium, which is a blank artifact that's used for the new artifact synthesis system, which we'll talk more about later. There are also a few other important miscellaneous changes to the new game mode, which we'll quickly list off here. Most importantly, you currently can only extract from the final treasury extract pad. All other extract pads on the map will only extract your loot. The solo buff has also been significantly changed. Based on how many team slots are empty, you gain more revives, increased PvE damage, faster shield recharge delay, and more max health and max shield. Art Glyph has also been removed and has been replaced with a system where everyone is given an extra revive, which increases per person based on empty team slots. Poison damage has also been changed. It now does direct health damage and ignores your shield. And for those of you who are wondering about PvP and any ranked updates, the PvP mode has also changed to be the same style as the PvE mode with the higher enemy density and the new final dungeon. The only difference is that you can actually damage enemy players and only need 3 glyphs to open the treasury. Ranked is also permanently enabled for the PvP mode, so if you want to play unranked, you simply play the PvE mode. And if you want to play ranked, you play the PvP mode. Now that we've returned to the Rift Rake with our new artifacts in hand, let's show you guys the new upgrade system to bring the most out of those artifacts you brought back. The previous upgrade system has now been replaced with the artifact synthesis system, which is essentially an RNG upgrade system where you fuse 2 artifacts together for a chance to get an upgrade. To synthesize artifacts, they must be blue or rare quality. Any rarities below this can be upgraded directly with Hawks and Wonderium in the artifacts page. We'll show you guys a few examples of how it's done so you can get familiar with the process. Starting with the most basic synthesis, take 2 blue artifacts and synthesize them together to have a 50-50 chance of a failure or a success. On success, you'll get a random artifact of a specific type determined by the types of artifacts you fuse together. You can see an artifact's type here, and the resulting possibilities by opening this menu here. On failure, you'll simply get an artifact of the same rarity. This means that by synthesizing 2 specific artifact types together, you can target a specific pool of artifacts to slightly reduce your RNG should you be aiming for something specific. I'll also point out here that if you synthesize 2 same artifacts, the result will always be that artifact instead of it being RNG. If we want to improve our chances of success, we can stabilize the process by adding in trinkets to fill up the stabilization bar. The more full the bar, the higher the chances of a synthesis success. Higher rarity trinkets will fill the bar more, and a new special trinket can completely fill the bar regardless of how large it is. We can also re-roll an artifact into a different artifact by instead synthesizing an artifact with a trinket. The artifact and the trinket's type will determine what trait pool your artifact will re-roll into if it's successful. If it fails, you keep the artifact and lose the trinket. Now, let's talk about the highest level of artifacts in the game, the orange tier artifacts, which includes legendary, masterwork, and corrupted rarities. Currently, if you do not own the DLC, you cannot make masterwork or corrupted artifacts. By successfully synthesizing 2 epic or purple artifacts, you'll have an equal chance of it turning into either a legendary, masterwork, or corrupted artifact. Legendary artifacts tend to grant an additional effect to the artifact, masterwork artifacts tend to improve the artifact's current effects, and corrupted artifacts tend to give a buff and debuff to the artifact, which significantly alters its use. These orange tier artifacts have a charge-based system tied to them, which when reaching 0 charges will revert the artifact back to purple or epic rarity. 1 charge is consumed upon embarking to exile with the artifact equipped, and 1 charge is earned upon successfully extracting the main artifact each game. So as long as you're winning every game, you could theoretically never lose your artifacts. And before you ask, there unfortunately is no way to currently manually recharge your artifact before it runs out of charges. Every artifact has a legendary, masterwork, and corrupt version, which greatly increases the options you have for customizing a loadout that works for you, so be sure to check them all out. Some artifacts may slightly improve your old playstyle, while other combinations may open up possibilities that you've never thought of. And before we wrap up this guide, I have a few tips for new and old players alike for their start into issue 3. Currency has been condensed a lot, so things don't cost as much, but artifacts and trinkets don't sell for much Hawks or Wonderium either. Instead, stock up on Hawks by looting every one of these treasury chests you can find, as they give about 100 Hawks per chest. This is nearly the equivalent of selling 1 legendary trinket or 1 common artifact, and you can find anywhere between 5 to 10 of these chests at each treasury location, as well as scattered throughout the final vault dungeon. And for Wonderium, make sure you harvest all the natural Wonderium nodes you run into, as these give about 50 Wonderium each, which is more than deconstructing a blue artifact or a legendary trinket. If you're first starting off, I highly recommend completing Tabitha's first reputation level and using the supply flare ability it unlocks. This lets you constantly call down a care package that contains ammo, healing, and grenades so that you'll never run out of supplies on your adventure. The Geo Shop now features a black market where you can buy daily rotations of trinkets and artifacts should you need fodder for synthesis. Don't get too caught up with clearing out every enemy you see. You have a time limit for each game, and if that time limit runs out, you'll fail to extract and lose everything you currently have. Make sure you have enough time to clear out the final vault. Focus on eliminating healer shaman disciples first, or you'll suddenly find an entire group of enemies that you're fighting back at full health. Focus on leveling your NPC reputation so you can unlock more gear to play with. You can see what you need to do by opening your quest list while in-game. And that's all for today's video. If you found it helpful, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And I'm extremely curious about how you guys feel about this controversial Hawk update, so please let me know what you think of it in the comments. Personally, I really miss the old PvP this game offered, but I can't deny that the current PvE mode is at least decently entertaining. Good luck and happy hunting.